combine small town roots with business savvy, and you've got the Rural Rundown podcast. We're sharing our marketing and branding strategies, tips, and tricks that rural businesses can use to educate, inspire, and entertain their customers, and to help you make sales and hit profit goals. So what does it take to go from your mom is your only fan to famous in a small town? Tune in and listen up as we feature business owners and organizations that are doing big things in their community and creating opportunities for generations to come. All right, it's another episode of the Rural Rundown podcast, and today I get to interview Rachel. A nice little Q&A. We just interviewed me on the last episode. Now Rachel's in the hot seat. How do you feel about being in the hot seat?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little nervous. I'm 8 months pregnant, so I feel like I can blame pregnancy brain if this goes bad, and I forget how to talk. But yeah, I'm here. I'm usually pretty better at listening, I feel like, than talking sometimes. So
Yeah.
I'm excited though. It'll be good.
And talking about yourself is hard. Like, that's how I felt when I was like, I don't know about this.
Yeah, it is a hot seat.
Yeah. I think
Feeling more.
so. I actually, when I was editing last week's episode, I really enjoyed listening back to it because I was like, I had some like decent stuff to say.
I love
I wasn't
it.
sure how that can go. Okay, all right, let's start. First of all, what is your origin story?
Ooh, that makes me sound like a superhero
Yeah.
or something. My origin story. Okay. Let's start from the beginning. Um, so I feel like ever since I was young, I've always really enjoyed, writing, being creative. I used to have this little magazine that I printed on my computer at home. It was the desktop computer. We still had the dial-up internet and everything, but it was on Word, and I had labeled the newsletter The Zone. That's what it was called, The Zone, and I'd interview my mom. Basically, was usually the person who got highlighted. And then I'd print it out for my whole family to read, which I don't know if anyone read it but my mom. But that is kind of, I think, like the start of who, you could look back on that and say, oh, this kind of makes sense to where I've gone from here. Um, I've always, like I said, always been creative. So when I was kind of looking into what I wanted to do as a living, I kind of hated that question. I'm not going to lie. And growing up, that was so hard for me. I could never answer it. Like there was lots of kids in my classes who'd be like, I'm going to be a pharmacist or I'm going to do this. And I was like, I don't know. Like I don't fit into the mold of everybody's answers that were doctor, teacher, banker, I'm like, and I didn't know what entrepreneur meant back then. Um, so I decided to go to college and was going to be an art teacher. That's my dad's an art teacher. So that kind of was like, oh, I like art classes. We'll see where this goes. And then I wanted to switch to elementary ed, and then I was like, I love kids, so don't get me wrong. But I just knew that wasn't for me, and that's brought me back to journalism. And I went back to the journalism department and found advertising, and that fit me really well. And that kind of changed my whole college career, the people I started meeting. Right out of college, I got a job at a B2B ad agency, which B2B, if people don't know, it's business to business versus to consumer. And that built my skills of learning how to, this is going to sound bad too, but when you work B2B, it's a lot of like the customers we had were very like industrial, if you want to say that way. So I had to learn how to be creative with things that maybe aren't, if you want to dare to say, sexy, like writing about maintenance and yearly maintenance and how to like make your machines work is not for everybody. And to do it in a way that gets picked up by the media and people want to share it, it taught me a lot, and I learned how to be much better a writer. And during this time, Jeremy, my boyfriend at the time, we had to decide where we were going to live. And I ended up following him to the middle of Minnesota. And I got another job, got hooked up with an awesome, my boss, Allison, old boss, Allison at the time, who was like a very interesting entrepreneur. Her hands are in everything. I learned a lot from her, which then kind of led me to starting my own business. And what I do for my clients is social media and Facebook advertising. So that's kind of the main marketing channels that I hit with them, but it's really a monthly service that I sit down with them, learn the hearts of their business, why they're in business, and then how can we talk about it in a way that people get to know them a little better and what they do versus just like, here's my product, I'm going to sell it, help me get it out on the internet. That's kind of a mentality, but we take it in a strategic way. So I don't know, that was probably really long-winded, but there's my origin story.
I love it. I think it was really interesting. First of all, like, we met in college, so I feel like I know so much about you. And I remember the magazine story after you started saying, I was like, oh yes, I have heard this before. I think it was really interesting when you said that you had learned how to talk about businesses or talk about these B2B businesses in a way that wasn't sexy. So talk about some of the clients you have now, because I think this really applies to like how you're able to work for these clients that I would say are not like typical like niches for people, I think.
Yes. That's a great question because I feel like when I look back in college, and you have probably a very similar experience, when we thought about where you wanted to work, it was always really this shiny, like, to consumer brands that you thought, like, oh, and sometimes that stuff is easier to come up with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're going to sell a bottle of Coke versus trying to sell an excavator to a dealership. um, so doing that, I mean, you have to like take yourself and put yourself in the seat of their ideal customers. This is like with any marketing, you know, strategy that you're going to do. You have to think it from their perspective. And I think a lot of times when I'm working with my clients, they're so involved in their own business and what they do. It's hard to see it from the outside of how do we need to frame this or talk about this in a way that does, is relatable and actually like is beneficial to our customers or just to the general public who needs to know what we do as a business or what we stand for. So yeah, it takes a little bit of work because you have to usually look past just like the generic general, oh, is that just a company that sells to other companies? So I don't know, what was your original question? I don't know if I answered it.
I think you did, but I think like it's interesting because and I don't know if you still have them as clients, but you've worked with like a sleep center, you've worked with some healthcare companies. I think maybe one time you did like a movie theater or something in town. And I think these are the things that I would say like break out of people's like typical niche where like there's not a lot of people who say like I'm gonna work with sleep centers and like that's all I'm gonna do. But I think you like hit it on the head where you said like, well, you were able to learn those skills when you were in Fargo that you were able to bring back because now you're living in an area that's like fairly rural. So instead of your niche being like one specific business, it's like all of these businesses that happen to be in rural areas and you're able to like write about that. Do you see that like that's me projecting from like the outside and when you like make that comment, but like do you see that in your business?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it has, when you say more rural, what does that look like on more of like a local standpoint? And I actually think that's a lot of fun because I think there's a lot of businesses that are local don't think they think, oh, I don't have an advertising budget to go to an ad agency. But there is ways to talk about your local business and get that reach and get that attention that you want and you desire, but you don't have to be like this big company. So I guess my focus has really gone to like, how do we communicate that? Yes, in a more of a local rural way, but it's this. I mean, if you want to think about it, it is kind of the same strategy and thought overall. As it's of finding those different themes and that matter to their customers and to them as the business too. So
yeah, for sure. Is there a piece of advice or experience that you could give to somebody looking to do what you do?
yes. Okay, so this is hard because I feel like if you listen to anybody else, they'll be like, niche down, find a niche. And I think we need to expand our minds on what a niche could be. So even what you just rattled off, like when people ask me, do you specialize in a certain area? Not really, because my specialty probably would be more local business rather than I specialize in healthcare marketing. And maybe that would be better for me if I did have that. But I think sometimes you just need to think about like where you are as a person. Where does your skill sets lie? And sometimes for me, I've been really lucky where I am now is a lot of my new business that comes in are referrals, or people are talking to my customers now and saying, "Hey, who works for you?" So in a way, I have different segments and themes, but I would say just don't get so caught up in that. And maybe that works for you, and that's great. You know, we've talked about this so many times. There's riches in the niches, but I think we can think about the niches as not so just one single. It has to be this way. And I mean, my other piece of advice would be just care about the people you work with, because they can tell. And they can tell if they're being prioritized or not, and if you really are listening to them. I mean, that in any job, whether you own your own business or not, I mean, I just would say show up and care. Show how you care. I think that's probably the most important thing.
I think that's such great advice. And I love what you said about niches. Like, you know, if we remove the stigma or what we think a niche is, how that could kind of expand, you know, the whole category of things. So that's great. Okay, so you are a mom, and like you said, you're pregnant now. So did becoming a mother change the way that you do business?
That's a great question. Did it change how I do business? Probably. I'm trying to think of like a specific example. Um, I think you get thrown into so many different new situations that it's made me very like focused on when I know I have time to focus on work. I'm able, like, it's go time, like get it done. Like that's more on a productivity level side of things. But I also think it's interesting because I've learned a lot. One of the fun things about like becoming a mom and having that experience is I can relate to some of my customers who also might be parents, or, you know, you can kind of, it opens up new conversations that way, which is kind of fun. And I think it's just probably made us closer too for some of the more longer term clients I've had. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'll have to think about that more because I don't know exactly pinpoints, but it probably has.
Yeah, I think when I was like thinking about questions to ask you, I feel like that's something that so many people, especially people who work for themselves. Now you had your first kid while you were working for somebody else, but people who work for themselves, it feels like scary maybe, or it's like, you know, a lot of people want to tell you. I feel this especially in rural areas or kind of the Western lifestyle, where like when you become a mom, like that's what you do, is like you be a mom. And so I feel like for some people, like maybe it's scary when they're thinking about becoming a mom or having kids, like will that change their business? So that's something that I just wanted to like tap in and see what your opinion was.
So I think it's going to be different for everybody. And I think a lot of it has to do with the resources you have. And also, I can't speak for everyone, but like we're all built differently on like what we need to do that keeps us like sane or fulfilled. And one of my things, which I know could be like a downfall for me, is I like to work. I do. I'm good at it. So like for me to get to make it a priority to also work and to also, you know, have a family, I there's a give and take for both, but like I want to pursue that. And I know not everybody can do that because there's limitations with daycare and things like that with small, and probably in cities too. It's just hard. But I mean, this would be my thought. If you, one thing, if you're like nervous about it, like I don't think there's ever a right time for anything. You either just have to go for it and you figure it out along the way, or, you know, or you just think about it forever and drive yourself crazy. So, I mean, I am an honest believer, and it's going to work out. And if it's not supposed to, I will know. God will tell me through the different experiences that I'm trying. So, I mean, I'm just trying to listen well. I'm a little nervous now going to this into the second time having a baby, because like you said before, I was employed, had a baby, then started my own business. And now I have my own business, but this time I do have an employee to kind of, you know, float me through that first kind of however much time I need. But it's interesting. I think it's different for everybody. And if any of you listeners have gone through this or have your experience, I'd love to like hear what you guys have to say too and your thoughts, because it's not one size fits all, but I think it's possible. Like if you want to make it work, you got to try, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. Let's talk more about deciding to work for yourself. Like, was that always a goal? I feel like I kind of know some of the like intricacies of what it was like when you decided to work for yourself. But like, was that always your goal? If you think back to like when you graduated college, you were in Fargo before you came to Minnesota, and then maybe it changed when you went to Minnesota. Like, just kind of walk us through that.
So this is funny because I don't know. I was working at the ad agency after school. And like I said, in high school, I didn't even know like what an entrepreneur really was or what that meant or that you could really start a business, because I mean, I have family members who have businesses, but my parents are a nurse and a teacher. So I mean, I never really had that template of starting something really on your own and seeing it, living it in the same household. Um, but after college and then working in an ad agency, I had always kind of thought, like, what if I started my own ad agency? And I thought of it in the way that that one was structured, not really the way that I do things now, because, but I'm pretty, I have one full-time employee now and then two part-timers. Maybe I could still transition to that. I don't know what's ahead for me yet. So, but then once I started working with Allison here in Minnesota, she really kind of showed me a framework of what it could be like to work on your own. And we kind of started together, like people were coming to her for consulting, and that kind of made us start our own little in-house marketing service, utilizing me as kind of an ad account manager. And then I saw how that worked, and it kind of gave me like a beautiful template of, you can do this on your own without needing to have the whole agency gamut yet of a designer, a videographer, a whole team of writers, human resources. Like, you can start something small and see if you can build it. So all of that, if you're following me, kind of, it was always there, but I didn't know it was really possible until I had to make a decision and do it. And then when I made the decision to go off on my own, I told myself, which I don't know how realistic this is for other people, but I just had my baby. He was 6 weeks old. And I was like, you have 3 months to see if you can get any interest at all.
Mm-hmm.
And if there is no interest at all, then you maybe need to recalibrate and figure out this is going to be harder than you think it is, or you can go from there and start small. That was kind of my timeline. And luckily, it was so weird. I don't know if I've shared this before. My husband was home for lunch and he came out and he's like, my friend from high school just shared this, that this company is looking for marketing help. You need to email this guy right now. And so I remember like putting Jaron down and getting on my computer and trying to set something up, and then the next week we met and it all kind of catapulted from there. So it was like I said, it was meant to be. Yeah. I feel lucky in that point. I know that's not probably what happens for everybody, but that's kind of what led me there. And then from here, it's just been learning as I go on capacity, hiring, all the little details of being a business owner that aren't always my specialty, but I'm figuring it out, because that comes with the entrepreneurship thing too. It's the things you love to get to do, and then also learning, how do I delegate the things I don't like or have to do for now until I can hire someone else to do it. So I hope I answered that.
Yeah. I love hearing people's journey. So now that you're on this journey, would you or could you ever go back to being an employee for somebody else?
I don't want to. No. No, I don't. I can see the beauty in it, but I also can't. I love working for myself, and I mean, it might eat my words someday. I don't know, but I hope not. I hope that I can keep this going and can always be industrious and resourceful enough to work for myself, because I really do love it.
Yeah. That's the interesting part I find about entrepreneurs. We've talked about this before too, that it's almost like a level of mindset. And it's like when you unlock the threshold it's like, you get to a new level in like a game or something, right? Once you unlock
Yeah.
you get to a new level, well, why would you go back and like replay the last one? Or, why do you like you're always reaching for something different, like striving to the top of a mountain. And certainly there's those times where you get to the top of the mountain and now there's another peak and like, you're only at the like middle part of it. But it's so interesting that like most entrepreneurs I talk to, either they like stay working for themselves or they transition to just a contract worker where they're still setting their own terms and working for other people. But yeah, interesting. Okay, I have a few more rapid fire. They're not so much rapid fire, but just like fun questions. So what is your favorite summertime activity as we dive into summer?
I would say going to the lake. We love that. That's kind of like our family thing right now. And we're lucky enough, Jeremy's parents, there's kind of a lakes area where we live up here. It's about 45 minutes away. They have a lake place, so we can go there and ride on the pontoon. And our son, right now, if you put the little floaty thing on him, he's going to be 3 in July to give reference to everything. He can kind of like paddle around on himself, and that's so fun to watch. He loves the water. So I'm just really excited to get like more into lake life as he gets older, and I always wanted that as like a kid growing up because you know where I
Yeah.
grew up. There's not a lot of lakes. Like there's Wall Lake and like Sioux Falls. If anybody is gonna reference this, or you go down to Yankton, South Dakota, you have to drive an hour or plus. So I remember being so jealous of everybody who had like knew the lake life. Well, you grew up
Yeah.
living in the lake life,
Yeah.
didn't you? So, yeah, so I like always wanted that, and somehow I must have manifested that. If
So I was just talking to Oli the other day, because we have this pool, obviously, and I was like, "Gosh, it's that time when you like just want to go, like hang out in the pool." And it's like a good thing that we don't drink because like 3 times out of the week, I'm probably like, dude, I could just like have a Sunday fun day today and hang out at the pool and do zero work. Like, you just have that inkling where you're like ready to go to the lake. And I was thinking about the last time, the first and only time I think that I've been to your lake place out there. And I was like, man, that was a heck of a time, but I was a wreck. Lake is great. I'm like, that's the way you do the lake. I was explaining to Oli because Oli also grew up in a place where there are little to no lakes, and I was like, you go out on the boat, you use the life jacket as like a diaper, you float, and then you drink, and then you don't realize like how drunk you are until you're like hanging over the edge of the pontoon. So that that's that. Um, okay, what snack could you eat over and over again?
That's easy. I would pick chips. I love a good potato chip, and that's my nickname. If you asked any of my uncles or aunts growing up, they call me Rachel Potato Chip. So I've been like that forever. I just, I mean, and I try now not to eat them. Like I eat them on special occasions, but that's my favorite. I can find a different flavor all the time
It's your
to snack on.
personality. I'm sad to hear that you don't eat them as much anymore.
Well, I try not to. I mean, like, if I could, like, go through a bag pretty quickly if it's the right flavor. So, you know.
Do you have flavor? Like the one that's the end all be all?
So, I would say pretty traditionally, like, since I've been a kid, like, probably barbecue or sour cream, or sour cream and onion. Those were, like, the chips. Now I'll get a little fancier with, like, well, because Lay's and all the other brands, they've stepped it up with their names. But those are still pretty classic, and I mean those are easy ones too.
Yeah.
So
Oh, I love that. Okay, South Dakota or Minnesota? What is your allegiance?
oh, that I don't know if I can answer this. It's so hard because I mean I have to say Minnesota now because this is where I will probably live for the rest of my life. But it's like makes me want to shed a tear a little bit because South Dakota, maybe you feel this way about Wisconsin too, but like I feel like South Dakota is always in my heart. Like, and it's so funny because when I hear about what's going on in South Dakota, if I'm visiting my sister or my parents who still live there, like I still know what's
Yeah.
going on because it seems so small, but it's not. there's a lot to the state and there's a lot to love, and I feel like I can still keep up with it and still feel like I'm part of it even though I live in Minnesota. So maybe that's cheating. But I love them both. I don't know.
I think that's how it's supposed to be. I'm the same way about Wisconsin. When people ask where I'm from, I'm like, oh, Wisconsin. But my life is so weird. We went through this in my episode where I was like, well, I'm from there, but I like adult life in South Dakota, so I feel very split. Like I spent 7 years in South Dakota. And so it's like, well, I like lived there. And then I spent 3 years with Oli traveling and living nowhere. And now I've been in Arizona for 2. So it's like, it's a very split thing. But I feel that about Wisconsin too. I'll call my mom and be like, what's the gossip? Like, what's going on? And like, my sister still lives like near our small town too. So if I ever need like the gossip my mom won't know, I always go to my sister and I'm like, so what's the deal? I always know what's going on. Okay. Have you and Jeremy, do you have a name picked out for your new baby?
So we do. We have a couple, but I think we have 3, and I'm not going to choose it until I see what the baby looks like.
Do you guys normally agree on names, or does he like bring some names, you bring some names?
Um, he agrees with no names, but brings no names to the table. So I'd love to hear if anyone else has the same experience. This one's a little different because we're slated to have a girl. That's what I've been told at all my ultrasound appointments. They say it's a girl. So I've always kind of had a couple names picked out, and I think he's just gonna have to choose one of those because I'm pretty set on him. But picking a boy name was really hard for us the first time.
Really?
And yeah, it was. Um, I don't know why, but I don't know.
Just
But this time, I think, and I really like to do, I try to do more, what's that, the word? Like we named Jaren's middle name after his grandpa. So I like tying in some like family, but we'll see. We'll see if that plays out.
yeah, for sure. Oh, that's exciting. Do you feel like I've never had kids? I don't. We didn't go over this in my episode, but I've never had kids, and I don't really plan to. It's not that I don't like kids. I love kids. I call my niece every day. She is 1.5, and I'm like, always tell Oli like, oh, I'm gonna call Danny. He's like, she doesn't have a phone. I'm like, well, she's near an adult who has a phone. Like, that's my like go-to. Like I love kids, but that's just like not in my life, probably not my path. So like when you're naming kids, because it's my assumption, like you can't really name somebody until you like see them, like spend a little time with them. Like I don't know, that would be so hard for me. And it sounds like maybe you feel the same way.
Yeah, I get a little like I love for people who know their name and they call the baby that all throughout their pregnancy. I love that for them. It's not for me because I would feel like, what if they came out and I decide they don't look like that anymore?
Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe I'm a weirdo, but yeah, it's funny because when we first had Jaren, they're like, "What do you want to name it?" And I'm like, "Oh, we don't know yet." So then they just left the card blank for like it felt like, and it really wasn't that long of time. I know some people don't name their kids till they like go home.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's whatever's best for you. But I feel the same way. It's hard. Like you want to. I feel like you want to get it right.
Yeah.
But
Do you have
I guess go
do you
ahead.
have a nickname for the baby before it comes out?
No.
We always, in my whole family, my cousins too, where we have all had like nicknames for the babies. Like when my sister had told me that she was pregnant, it was the size of an olive, so we called the baby Olive like for a long time. And then before she had her baby, my dad was like, well, if it's a boy, you have to name it Buster, because Buster Bender would have been its name. And Kelly's like, I can't, because it reminds me of Buster, like Arthur's friend, from like whatever. Yeah, but I'm gonna mess with a kid named Buster Bender. So I thought maybe like the name Buster would stick around as like a nickname for Danny. And she is a tornado. She's got a whole lot of sass. Like Buster would fit her, but it just like, and I thought maybe Olive would too, because we had called the baby Olive for so long. My cousins have like names for their babies too. but it like never stuck after like Danny was born. So that was really
That's really
funny.
Yeah. I would say like we have a lot of nicknames after that come out, but yeah, not before. That's so interesting.
That is interesting. Okay. What I loved this question that you asked me last time. What advice would you tell 10-year-old Rachel?
Oh, I want to think about, let's reflect on 10-year-old Rachel for a second. This is a funny, like, little anecdote I don't know if I really need to tell, but 10-year-old Rachel, like, wasn't like, she thought she was going to be a tough girl this stage. Like, I thought I was going to be in the army and I was going to be tough and strong and, like, I don't know what. That was my mentality, I think, when I was 10. Like, I'm tough. And what would I tell her? I would tell her to probably, like, try not to overthink everything. Like, it's okay. It's going to work out. And, 10-year-old Rachel was about to go into middle school, which that was a little rough, too. So I think similar to your advice, like, it's okay if not everybody likes you. And it's hard to accept, but you have to find the people who accept you for who you are. And you don't have to keep trying to play the game of making everybody like you, because it's hard and that's never going to happen. So find the people who make you feel good. Remind yourself that you are worth it, and that everything, is going to kind of come to fruition. It's going to be okay.
Yeah.
And you can be tough if you want, but you also don't have to try to be so tough. It's okay.
It's okay. I have one dying question. Did your brother Ron ever read The Zone?
Oh, I doubt it. I'm sure not. I think I annoyed my sister and my brother to no end. My sister always tells me, I remember doing this at Christmas time. I would set up like a presentation where I would act out the Christmas story with all of our little Christmas pieces. And my sister said I'd make them all sit down, and it would be like a 45-minute process because I'd set up for about 20 minutes before I start giving the presentation. And she said it was aggravating. So I'm sure they hated me and didn't want to do anything that I had created or concepted.
Because you're the youngest of the family, which I think is like a fun dynamic for me because I'm the oldest. So I'm like, I love asking these questions, and because I know your family, I was like, Ronald never once read that magazine.
No. Ronald, I don't think, had a conversation with me until I was 18 years old. So
that's so sad, but like also like I feel like it's on par.
Yeah.
Oh God. Okay, well, thanks so much. That's all I have. I appreciate you. I love this. I think it's so fun because you and I have been friends for so long, and because you lived in South Dakota, your family kind of like adopted me a little bit and let me join in on family time when I went to school there. So like I just love you, and I love this background, and I'm glad you got to share it with our listeners.
Thank you guys for listening, and hopefully it didn't take you on too big of a like crazy gloop fest. But thank you, Pregnancy Brain, and we'll play that.
Well, that's it for this episode of the Rural Rundown podcast.
Thanks for listening. You can always find us on social media at the Rural Rundown.
And if you really liked this episode, we would totally love it if you gave us a review and gave us a little rating.
It would mean so much to us. And for more small town roots and business savvy, catch us on the next one.